You could write a book about the life and times of David Schwarz. In fact, Schwarz did just that. It's a raw tell-all titled All Bets Are Off. Welcome, David. It's been an eventful life, hasn't it, so far?
It has, Mike, and thank you for having me.
Look, I love the way you played your footy. I mean, this is basically a footy program. As eventful as it's been, I want to talk to you about the football. The end of 1994, I had you in the top 25 players in the competition after just 60 games, and then you had 3 reconstructions in 12 months and were never the same. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. We got to the end of the '94 season, and I thought, yep, this game's easy. And then it quickly spits you out the other end if you take it for granted. I didn't take it for granted, but certainly things changed significantly from February onwards of '95.
Hasn't been a great time for Melbourne supporters of recent years, but that qualifying final against Carlton in 1994, to me, that was sort of the zenith of your career.
Yeah, it was. And it's funny because I probably shouldn't have played that day because I had several police rock up on my door that morning and chasing warrants that I owed.
Really?
So,
were you punting back then, were you?
Yeah, I was. I was just pretty ordinary with money. I didn't pay fines or that sort of thing. And someone had obviously given information to the right people, and they knocked on my door. So I wrote them out a cheque, and I think it was for around about $6,000 or $7,000. And I knew I didn't have the money in the account, so I thought, gee, I better play a good game this afternoon. And I got to the footy as nervous as I've ever been, and the day just unravelled as this most amazing game of footy. And we got the chocolates over a Carlton side that had been pretty good all year. And I remember at the end of the game I said, Danny Corkin, we better write a cheque because I'm in trouble here. And the club wrote out a cheque, and the cheque for the warrants didn't bounce.
That's 20 years ago, David. And you owed $6,000 or $7,000 then. Now, What was that for? Were parking fines and stuff like that?
Parking and, yeah, just...
You were a cavalier young man, weren't you?
Yeah, I suppose I was. I just lived life day by day rather than worrying about the future, and didn't probably understand that our time in footy was short. It was going to be this little piece of snippet within your life. I just thought it'd roll on forever, and after that we'll get into something else, and I never really worried.
I must say, retrospectively, I've said this publicly before and I'll say it again, that I think at the end of '94, Wayne Carey was the best player in the comp, and if there was a challenger to that sort of role, it was you. You'd kicked 60 goals that year from centre-half forward, kicked 15 in your last 3 games, and it was just, and probably the Carlton game, as good as it was, you were almost as good the next week against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I felt as though I was comfortable that I could tear a game apart if things went my way. My number one thing is I love marking, I love going for contests, and I set a goal that year that I wanted to take the most marks in the comp, which I ended up doing. And for me, that was the most gratifying thing that no one took more marks.
1995 rolls around, you are injured in a practice game. It's the first of 3 reconstructions in 12 months. I mean, do you feel cheated now? Did you feel cheated at the time?
No, it's just a part of life. No, I feel as though that, and this all happened, this first injury happened because I actually took it easy on someone. It was Greg Wells's nephew, I think it was, that was playing in an intra-club practice match, and I saw him there, and I could have caved him in. He was just set up, ready to sit on his head and just bury him. And I thought, no, I'll just kind of push in, and I pushed in on him just to take an easy mark, and came down, and I only probably jumped a foot or so off the ground, and my leg didn't bend, and I heard this pop, and I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. And the next thing I know, I was having a reconstruction. My sister had been through a couple, and I knew that they're going to be pretty painful, but I thought I'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks. I didn't understand the gravity of what had actually happened.
But you were back quickly when you played again that year.
I was back full training in 4 weeks.
After a reco?
Yeah.
And you played, what, mid-season?
I played 15 weeks later. So I played against Collingwood on Queen's birthday, and we had a really first kick comes down, I took a mark and kicked a goal, and I thought, yep, I'm back. Kicked 3 that day, and I walked in as cocky as anything, and I came out against Sydney, and my first 3 possessions was so easy. Just came out in front of Andrew Dunkley and took the ball and twisting and turning, and the next thing I went to turn him one way and my leg collapsed again, and I thought, oh, hang on, we've got big issues here.
The next year, practice game again. Now, it was one of the saddest stories that I've been associated with football. I heard the news, and I was working in the press at the time, that you'd done your knee at Lavington. I thought, this has got to be the end of you. 3 times in 12 months.
Yeah, I was playing in the reserves. Went to take off from the goal square. I remember it vividly, and my leg just blew out. I didn't even get a chance to turn. It just popped. So that time I broke my leg in 2 places. Had my ACL torn, my PCL was torn, and it was just like a car wreck, my knee. And I've been carried off on a stretcher 3 out of my last 4 games. I thought, stuff, and I'm walking off, and I got to the tin dugout at Lavington, how they got those little, where the interchange players would sit, and I sat down there, and I was thinking my career's done, and out of frustration I turned around and punched the shed and broke my hand. So
did you really? Broke it?
Got a broken hand, I got a broken leg, and my footy career's in trouble, and I'm starting to punt pretty hard, and I'm trying to do a university degree, and I'm trying to everything's just rolling around. And I remember jumping in the car with Mum because she had to drive home from Albury because I couldn't drive because my leg and my hand, and just thinking, Mum, it's finished. And she said, well, you got a contract, see it through. You got to do the right thing by the club. And at that point I thought my career was done.
Daniel Menzel's got a big knee for the 4th time, and I think he's 21, 22 years of age. Have you had any contact with him? Yeah,
I have. I've touched base with Daniel. Yeah, he's a tragic story because he's such a wonderful talent. Whether he's a wonderful talent or not, he's bloody unlucky. It's a really tough decision for him. Does he get back on the bike and just get the surgery done and back in 12 months? Understanding that, this is a bloody hard recovery. You just don't recover from a knee reconstruction in 4 weeks. This next one will be a traditional surgery, I'd suggest, because the Lars has failed. It's going to be a year of rehabilitation. And not just an easy year. We're talking about some serious injuries, some serious damage to the knee. And the biggest thing for him is mental. Is he able to walk out onto the footy field and feel as though his knee isn't going to collapse? Probably not. So then he's going to need help, probably psychologically. So this is a young man in his prime having to weigh up so many decisions to hopefully get back on the park.
I know you went on and won a Best and Fairest in 1999 at Melbourne, but I've heard you say before you were never the same player after the Ricos.
No, I wasn't. My strength was my agility and the ability to be able to jump on blokes' heads, and that was taken away. I had to have a selfless role of almost a bullocking forward and create opportunities for others. I couldn't sit on blokes' heads anymore, and I couldn't.
You would have missed that, wouldn't you? I mean, you were such an athletic, for someone so big, you were so athletic. You loved that sort of natural jumping at the footy, see footy, jump at footy.
I liken it, and I'm nothing like Tiger, but it'd be like Tiger not pulling out the driver ever. You can't pull out the trick that actually you love doing, and fans love that. I just watch Jeremy Howe now, and that's what I would try and do. That's what I could do back then. So I lost all that, and that was having your guts ripped out of you.
Talking about guts, you played 12 games in 1995-96, came back in 97. The Encyclopedia of Footballers says that you were 113 kilos. Is that right?
No, I was 123. I was
were
big.
You really?
I was huge. And that's when Gary Lyon called me the Ox, because the only thing I could do was pump iron. And I have one of those bodies that as soon as I touch a weight, I put on size. And I came back and I was big. I was so big. I'm 115 now.
You played 123?
123 I played.
When Todd Viney moved on from the captaincy, I remember a two-way battle, David Neitz and David Schwarz. Were you disappointed that you didn't get that job?
Yeah, I was.
Should you have got it? He was a good. History will say he was a good choice, Nita.
In hindsight, Neil Danaher made the right call. I was a bloke that couldn't look after myself, yet alone I couldn't look after 42 blokes. But I knew that the players would follow me with whatever I did, because they knew that I would back them up and I'd die for them. And I'd die for my footy club. And I think every supporter knew that it didn't matter what had happened, my footy club came first. That's what I was thinking back then. And probably in hindsight it wasn't first, it was probably second behind the punt.
Let's go back to when you were a young boy growing up in Sunbury. You're 8 years of age, 7 or 8 years of age, and you're with your father and he's shot dead. Was it a motel room?
Yeah, we were still in Beechworth at that stage, and Mum and Dad had separated, and it was my turn to go up and visit Dad for the school holidays. And I went up there, and Dad had been seeing another lady who was also, in a marriage breakup, and her husband came in and we're going fishing that morning, and he came in and shot Dad beside me.
You're in the same room?
Yep.
How traumatised were you? Do you remember? Can you remember what it's like as a 7 or 8 year old to have something like that happen in front of you?
I think at the time you can't process it. I remember when I woke up, you know, Dad was obviously dead, but then she was fighting with the gunman in the front of the hotel room. And my only escape, because it was near the door, was to get through one of those serveries.
Wow.
So I got through the servery and then went and got help, and I just remember I was so tired, and I slept, and then I jumped in the police car and went and told Mum. And
you told your mother?
Or the police did. Yeah. So we all went in there together, and Mum broke down, obviously, because it was, you know, Dad had been a huge part of our lives for such a long time, and we couldn't believe what had happened. And then the next 2 or 3 years are a blur. The next 2 or 3 years, you know, you think that Dad's going to come back. You think that...
You were close to your dad?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He was a chef, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a chef. Very rare that as an 8-year-old you're not close to your dad. You know, he was a Hawthorn supporter, so I was mad Hawthorn. Yeah. He was a fisherman, I love fishing. Anything my dad did, I wanted to do, because he was my hero. He was my... You know, and then that transferred to Mum, and Mum's taken over that role ever since, but I always thought that Dad would walk back through the door one day.
You've got kids of your own now. I mean, we all love our kids, but is there a sort of an extra dimension with you because of your upbringing?
My boy's 8 right now, and I remember speaking to Karen the other night about it, that, you know, that I went through Dad's death right where Cooper is now, and me as an 8-year-old was thinking that I can handle this. Now, my son he can't handle it. He couldn't handle something like that, and I think I was pretty ignorant or naive to think that I could have at the time. Did
you subsequently have counselling? I mean, it wasn't fashionable then, but did it get to the point where...
Well, no, we didn't. You know, back in those days, families just shut up shop. You know, it was almost taboo to talk about stuff like that. So, no, it wasn't until many, many years later, and I'm talking after I gave up gambling, that I went and saw Jan Beams, a well-respected and well-known therapist here in Melbourne. And I had a smoking addiction there and I'm cigarette smoking after...
You're an addictive personality though, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got a few issues.
Well, but you do, when you attack something, you do it with relish, don't you?
Well, I gave up the punt, I took up smoking. And I gave up smoking, I took up coffee drinking, where I was having 20 cups a day. And, you know, it was only the start of this year that I got off coffee and I'm drinking green tea. So for the first time in my life, I'm probably been addiction-free. But we went and saw Jan, and she started to try and help me get off the cigarettes, and she said, we've got bigger issues to deal with first.
And did they date back to your father?
Yep. The only way you can explain it, it's like an onion, and you've got to peel back the layers, and we had a lot of layers to peel back. And there's a lot of hurt and a lot of emotion and a lot of questions that, you know, because the question still remains, why did it happen to my dad? And that we had to deal with that. And I'm now comfortable that we've worked through, and we've got a better understanding of how life works, and, you know, sometimes things just aren't fair.
So when did the grieving process start? I mean, were you too young at 8 to sort of actually process this?
Absolutely. Yeah. At 29, 30. So it was 2000. It was 2003. So I was 31.
Wow.
31 before I grieved.
Did it get you? I mean, was there an emotional breakdown at that point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's realisation that it's final. You know, that when someone dies, unless you're very special, you don't come back.
After the break, David, you and the punt.
Okay.
Let's talk about the punt. You've mentioned it 2 or 3 times on the way through so far. How big was the problem for you?
It was my life. I was getting paid to play football. I was studying at university and also at high school. And my number one thought was gambling.
What age were you at this time?
From the age of 14 through to the age of 32 was my number one love.
Ahead of football?
Yep.
Did you bet on football?
No. No, I didn't bet on sport. I love the horses, the dogs, the trots, the casino, the poker machines. You know, everyone in my life was a punter. You know, and if they weren't punters, they weren't really mates of mine. And and that's who I surrounded myself with. So it was I had one life here and I had one life there, but I had the punt, which was over here, which was probably consuming every thought that I had.
And every dollar that you had. I mean, I've heard stories that you were down, that you lost $2.5 million over your betting career.
Oh, no, I lost a lot more than that. I lost double that.
You lost double that?
Yeah. When I finished footy, I owed $2.5 million.
You owed $2.5 million?
Yep. And when you owe that sort of money, Mike, it's not easy to get back up. Like
No.
It's all relative to what you're earning at the time, but when you leave football, you don't just walk into a $400,000 job. You don't walk in. You got to actually start from scratch. So, not only did Karen and myself have to, talk to the creditors and actually keep dialogue open and communication open, we actually had to find work. So, we saved. We did whatever we could to try and stay alive. Just to meet our commitments. And it wasn't until I gave up gambling that opportunity started to open up. And if I didn't give up the punt, I'm dead or I'm in jail.
I want to ask you about the sense of hopelessness when you know you owe that much money and you can't actually ever see the prospect of paying it off. When was the low point of your of that sort of existence?
May the 3, 2005 was my last bet.
Was it?
Yep.
And that was when your debt was running at $2.5 million?
Yeah, but at that stage I didn't know it was that high because you live in a cloud. You haven't got a balance sheet that you're actually checking off. So 2005 was my son's christening, and I had a bet. I'd been given a tip, and it got beaten, and I had 5,000 each way on this horse, and it got beaten. And
did you have the $5,000? Was it your money?
No, I had to put away, but I borrowed 1,000 off the father-in-law for my son's christening, and that probably says a bit about a punter and what they think and how they process things. That I could borrow money for my son's christening, yet I'm more than happy to have 10,000 on the horse. Anyway, the horse gets beaten in unlucky circumstances, as we say. And one of my best mates came down, big Siggo, and he said, for 15 years you've had your life and you've travelled the world and played footy and got nice houses and you've had all this money go through your hands. It's time to pull your head in. You've got a family. And with that, I went inside and said to Kaz, right, it's time to give up. That was rock bottom. And
that's the last time you've had a bet?
That's the last time I've had a bet.
What about all those people that were owed money, David? Were they all satisfied then and subsequently? Were you able to pay them all off?
Every person got paid back, every cent. And we made one of the... Because Karen had no understanding of addiction, so she didn't know what it was like for me to wake up in the morning and have to get a bet on. And I was sick. My only thought was when I woke up, let's go to the tote, let's get as much money as we can, get the tips, and away we go. So she didn't know what it was like. So she said, right, like any other addiction, we've got to change your lifestyle. So we embarked on this lifestyle change. Simple things like not reading the paper until the form and the race results were taken out. So Karen would get up every morning and take them out of the paper, and I'd then read the paper and there'd be nothing in there. She, no money, no borrowing, no lending, no cash, no nothing. To the point where for 4 years she took the car when I brought it home, filled it up and brought it back. Because the temptation for me every time I had money in my hand was not because I wanted to, but I'd go straight down to the tote and bet. Even when my son before he was born, we put all our baby stuff on lay-by, and I went up to the tote with $5 and I turned it into $1,700, and I went and brought the stuff, and Karen said, return it. Take it back. I don't want this if it's betting money.
Yeah.
So I convinced her to let us have it because we weren't going to be able to pay for it any other way. And anyway, so we just did everything we could that we could think of to actually minimise and put hurdles in front of us so we wouldn't fall over. Everyone we owed money to, we rang them up and told them that we'd pay them off, $5, $10, $50 or $100 per month, but we'd pay them off.
Were there any big creditors that...
Of course there were. There was huge
threatened
creditors.
to do some damage to you?
Absolutely. And we had to deal with them at the appropriate time. I had to borrow a lot of money off Karen's father to pay back those people.
How much is a lot of money?
Just under $250,000.
Wow. That's a big show of faith from him, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we signed a contract that I'd pay him back in 12 months at an interest rate. Now, I didn't have a job. So this was faith through him that helped me do that. And, it took me 2 years and I paid him off.
Did Karen... You talked about hurdles before. The biggest hurdle, I suspect, would have been someone you love saying to you, if you keep doing this, I'm out. Did it ever get to that point?
Oh, absolutely. 2 or 3 times.
She said she'd go unless things changed.
When we hit rock bottom, she said, right, this is your last chance. And it was. and we're still together. We got married on January the 18th, 2008.
Wow. Geez, you were a colourful figure in your punting days, and I don't mean to be flippant about that, but that story about the Spring Carnival at Flemington when you won a fortune, didn't you, out there?
Yeah, I won just under 700,000.
One day?
Yeah. I won just under $1 million in 3 weeks. Took me 13 weeks to lose it.
Wow.
And, you know, the punt can be exhilarating, and for 99% of the people, it works. You know, you can have a bet and, you know, you can walk away and not worry about it. But for me, I'm the 1% that can't. You know, if I bet tomorrow, I'm gone. You know, I lose everything that I've put in place.
So at the height of your betting spree, what sort of numbers were you betting in?
Probably $250,000 on a weekend.
Gee. Did you bet while you were playing footy?
On the horses, absolutely.
Yeah, so did it get to the point where you'd look up on the scoreboard and see, you would?
Yeah.
You're, as I understand, you're saying you could look up on the scoreboard and see that a horse that you'd backed had been beaten. I mean, how did that affect your mindset on the football field?
No, just move on.
Move on?
Just brush it over and move on. And
so there's another race in half an hour?
I have to play a bit better. Yeah. You know, it was ridiculous.
You know, if you're a smoker, and I've been that, or a drinker, they say, have one and you're back on it.
Yeah.
So is that been your sort of mantra?
I can't do that, Mike. I've got all my contracts that I have, and you know, I work for ALH and I work for SEN Radio. If I break those, if I gamble, those contracts are broken. If I lose those contracts, I lose the ability to feed my family. So I'm not going to break it.
Is the AFL responsible enough in its attitude to gambling on football?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And I don't think so in that I believe the AFL is drunk on the revenue that they receive from gambling agencies. And until that goes, we're in trouble. My biggest issue with gambling at the moment is these corporate bookmakers are grooming kids into gambling. And people will say, well, how's that happening? Well, when my boy comes up to me and says that Richmond are favourites because they're $1.63, we've got issues.
Yeah, he shouldn't know that, should he?
No, he shouldn't. He should know that they're favourites because Jack Revolt's a bloody good full forward and Trent Cotchin's a great midfielder, and they're up against Brisbane, who have had their real battles travelling to Melbourne. You know, this summary of the game is why we should have a favourite and non-favourite.
You were a mentor to a bloke called Travis Johnson, #1 draft pick, liked to punt, liked to beer, never fulfilled his potential. Do you feel any guilt about the years that you had with Travis?
Should I?
Only you know the answer to that.
Absolutely.
You had a lot of time with him.
Absolutely not. You know, I don't blame one person for where I got to. We're 18 years of age. We can make our own decisions. I never once said to Travis, "Come and have a bet." I never said to Travis, "You know, it's time to go to the casino." He's a mature adult. He makes his own decisions.
I'm interested in your role as a commentator. You were recently quite critical of Mark Neild in the game Melbourne and GWS. In fact, I think at half-time on that day, your view was that Mark Neild might be gone as coach at the end of that day.
If, you know, is it a Band-Aid? I'm not sure. The footy club, though, is in serious trouble. Our footy department has been a debacle. You know, there hasn't been anything down in the football department that's worked. You know, the Cameron Schwab is probably the first step of many before this club is actually up and going. It's a proud club, Mike. I don't want to see my club go down. You know, I actually want to go back and help. I was
going to ask you, would you go back and help as a broad statement? I mean, if they would you contemplate a role on the board, or would you contemplate a coaching type role, or what?
Whatever needs to be done. You know, as long as I can feed my family, which is, you know, I have to keep my commitments because I've got loans like anyone else. You know, I still have to bring in income to do that because I'm coming from so far back. But if that means going on the board, or if that means that I gave up everything and became a coach, well, I would do whatever needs to be done so my footy club does survive. Because without that footy club, I'm not sitting here talking to you.
Do you think Mark Neild will be coaching Melbourne in 2014?
I don't think so.
You don't?
No.
You don't rate him as a coach?
I don't know him as a coach, but I can only see what I can see on the field. And if you could tell me in the first 3 rounds that the players were playing for the coach, I'd be lying.
The footy show, the famous incident when John Sammy Newman thrust a pie into your face and you didn't take kindly to it. Now, I'm sure you've been asked this 100 times. Was it contrived?
Absolutely not. No. We had.
Tell me the lead up to it.
Well, I played my 150th against Collingwood, and I lasted 7 minutes. I got a corked thigh, or corked buttocks from Anthony Rocker. And so Ralph Horowitz, who was the producer of the time, rang me up and said, "We want to give you something for your 150th." And for my 100th, they gave me a pre-lean football, which was a signed footy by Ed, Trev and Sam, straight to the pool rooms, just one of those little gimmicky things. And I loved it. I really loved the footy show. It was fabulous. So I walked in there and expecting to get this little footy, and second last segment, and bang, he pulls out this box, and I thought, you silly old mongrel. And so I threw him across the room, and
You did that with a bit of vigour, didn't you? It looked like you were genuinely angry.
I was going to kill him.
Did you talk to him after the show?
No.
No?
No, we didn't. We didn't talk for years. I went on the show, but we never spoke. And he'd try and engage, but you talk about great people in football. John Sammy Newman is a great person for football.
So you're reconciled now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned Karen in a lot of half the sentences that we've talked about this afternoon. She's obviously special in your life, not just because she's your wife and the mother of your children, but she's been very solid in an emotional sense, hasn't she?
Yeah, no doubt. I just watch her, the way she brings up our kids, and I'm really lucky that, that we found each other, or that I found her and I hung on, and, it was just, sometimes, and I ask, where did she come from, and, maybe Dad sent her my way, I don't know what happened, but Karen came along and she pulled me out of the fire and she said, right, come with me and I'll take you to where you want to go.
Mate, I love watching you play, you know that. Your life story's been eventful, interesting, and I admire the way that you've got it back on track, and where you're headed from here is you've got all the best from all of us here.
No, I appreciate it, and I've been trying to get on this show for a bloody long time, Mike. It's taken too long. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.